Shalom, Kohalom, Yabashim Yoshai, Bashim Kakadash. All praises, glory, and honor going to the Most High, the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. In the name of His only begotten Son, Yahushai. In the name of the Holy Spirit. Blessings and salutations to all the elect. Double honors to our apostles of the great millstone. And shalom to all the Israelites and the true believers in Yahbashim Yahushai in the Spirit. Right? Because in order to understand anything that I just said, you'd have to be in the Spirit. And I came across another a division between whether this guy believes it or not, the tribe of Gad and the other tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, mainly Judah here in this case. But I'm not sure what this guy is trying to say from his ultimate video, but I'm going to play it and go into some scriptures and some articles as well. Because, here it is, they going back and forth on some. This says the oppression Olympics is a myth, right? So, you put us in slavery too. We're the most oppressed, or this person's the most oppressed. Who the hell's oppressing you? Who's the oppressor? Why are you worried about who's being oppressed the most when you should be? You're in a slave like it's total, not a slave like a complete slave mind. All right, and these guys are lost souls. All right, so I'm gonna play this madness and go into the scripts.
About the 5 civilized tribes that kept slaves. Man, I gotta tell you, I hate doing this. Why is it that whenever I see a black creator talking about natives, it's always about this shit? Now, he talked a lot of smack in that video and showed maps and stuff, but he didn't show one source. Someone who wants to be the #1 history resource for black people, you'd think you'd actually have sources. I'm not here to fight, and I'm not here to cause division. I'm here to talk about the real history of America. Do black people ever wonder why there's 3 times as many of you as there are of us in our own country? Brace yourself, I'm about to drop a critical race nuclear bomb. With sources. I was absolutely heartbroken when I learned about this stuff. So one of my teachers was an Afro-Indigenous man from one of the southern tribes, the Osceola tribe. He was a medicine man. He looked black but dressed native. I had asked him why didn't the black people join the natives after they got their freedom from slavery. Then he told me he was descended from buffalo soldiers. And he told me the story of buffalo soldiers. He actually carried an old photo that looked a lot like this, and he said one of his ancestors was in it. Following the Civil War, African American men, known as buffalo soldiers, served on the western frontier battling Native Americans. They passed the legislature in 1866, the same year that Crazy Horse fought Custer and won. After the slaves were freed, they wanted to achieve the equality of the white man, and there weren't many options left to them except the military. Approximately 180,000 African Americans who served in the Union Army during the Civil War were also a part of this. The black Union soldiers were joined by many freed slaves from the South and assisted America in the westward expansion. Their main duty was support in the westward expansion, but according to my teacher, they were also stationed in the plains and assisted in the eradication of the bison. Even though the rest of the black people were experiencing severe racism and discrimination, they still served in the military. Maybe because they were tricked. Because they were separated from their African spirituality, most black people today are Christian. So to get back to my teacher's story, his ancestor was stationed in the plains. Apparently the military would set them up in a little fort, give them a big case of .50 caliber ammo, and their only job would just be to shoot as many bison as they could. And he said many of them were forgotten out there. They weren't even told when the war had ended or when their service time was over. Eventually, after years, they deserted their posts and they ended up on the reservation, where the natives took them in and made them family. So 1866 to 1890 is the Indian Massacre era, where both the black and white people joined up to eradicate the Native Americans. And they were still taken in by natives and made family.
Okay, so
Reservation where the natives.
Right. the only good, one of the main
Nuclear
only
bomb.
good point he really makes here
With about this stuff.
you can call
To
them the
cause
five
division.
civilized tribes. The only good point he really made is that you can call them the five civilized tribe, or you can call them the Christian tribes. Right? Yeah, he says the traditional. Right there, he says.
Show one source. Someone who wants to be the number, not here to fight, and I'm not here to. Black people ever wonder why?
Yeah, and they had
Someone who wants to
700
be the number one us in our
very
own
little
country.
slaves. They have maybe
Brace yourself. I'm about to
Couple
drop a
hundred
critical
slaves.
race nuclear bomb. History
700
resource
slaves, they
for
said.
black country. Brace sources.
I'll go into it because this guy's a bug out, right? All right, he makes it seem like
1866, the same
Judah
year
was out
who
there, the
served
main guy
in the
chasing
Westford
down Gad,
exterior
putting him to
racism
death,
and
man.
discrimination.
that wasn't the case. Yeah, there were Buffalo Soldiers, but they were soldiers. You know who else was with the Buffalo Soldiers? Indian scouts. Sometimes whole Indian tribes. Okay, you had Indian tribes fighting against other Indian tribes with the U.S. government, with the French, with the colonizers, with the Buffalo Soldiers. Okay. That was happening. So what's your point? You know what I mean? And all this really is just, this guy ain't right. Because what is he talking about?
Eradicate the Native American.
Only the natives have the teachings for equality. And look what happened look at the natives. The Most High got their ass, man. All right, they're low. Okay, your medicine man, your holy elder, that nigga literally doesn't have any feet right now because of diabetes. You worried about teaching equality, man. And you want to talk about traditional tribes. When's the last time our people ate traditional? Look at them. They're eating the white man colonizer food, dying every day. All right? So all that bullshit. This nigga get, what was that? Oh, a Gadite. I thought it was a Air Jordan shirt. But regardless, he want to talk about equality, man. See?
The Native
Here it is,
American.
you ready to go against your own brother. But when it comes to the so-called white man, you're not talking about the so-called white man. We're both the white and black people joined up to eradicate the Native Americans. Natives joined up as well, man. Okay, kick certain tribes off, get some land there. Some of them are Indian scouts working with the U.S. government. Why? Because they understood what they were dealing with, man. The devil, the red dragon. So-called white man. All right. This is Matthew 15 and 13. Be answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up. Let them alone. They be blind leaders of the blind, and if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. That's right. So, yeah, just you think you're rooted in something. That's not going to help you in that day, man. Right? You're worrying about equality. We're the furthest away from equality ever in history. Okay? People were more equal back then. In the ancient times. Why? Because you have a super elite high class. And then everyone else was, able to sustain themselves. Now people can't sustain themselves without working endless hours, giving taxes, and then literally paycheck to paycheck where you could be homeless, man. People weren't homeless like that back in them days or on these drugs that they are now. So let them alone. They be blind leaders of the blind, and the blind lead the blind. Both shall fall into the ditch. Yeah, you want to bring back traditional Indian, whatever the hell, or bring that up like it even matters, man. See, our people are lost. Okay, even these men that identify as so-called Native American, they're very lost. All right, because deep down, you should know who you really are. Okay, and why the things that happen to our people happen. Right? Nowhere in that video did they sit down and say, you know what, why did this happen? Who was behind it? Who was funding it? Where was the money coming from? All right, the world back then, it was not much different than today and how it was ran. You had to pay taxes, you had to go work. Otherwise, you weren't going to survive. Plus, you had the so-called white man who would have just put you to death at any moment, any time of day, man. And he would do that to Jake, the so-called black man. He'd do it to the so-called Native Americans, tribe of Gad. those 5 civilized tribes, those Muskogean tribes, the Reubenites. Okay? And I'm going to go into that, okay? Because this guy goes in the Buffalo Soldiers, like, real quick, you know? He goes in it real quick and in and out of it real quick, like, oh, Jake was over there just going super hard on the Gad. They were just following orders. Okay? And most of the time, they were doing what? Going after warrior clans, warrior tribes, okay? Groups of men who were out there fighting the so-called white man, Gadite man. Okay? So it says, a subject of historical study and popular legend, the African... Okay, let me... Salakia. This says, Buffalo Soldiers, Legend and Legacy. All right. And this is, I think, National Museum of African American History, I believe. Okay. The heroism of the soldier has been celebrated in music. Okay. And then talk about the buffalo robe. The buffalo robe, a type of fur overcoat, is an iconic object of African American soldiers with Native Americans and white explorers in the 19th century. And both fact and myth, Native Americans made buffalo robes from the skin and hair of buffaloes, and some wrapped their dead in the robes before placing them on scaffolds. White explorers on Lewis and Clark Trail coveted the robes for the warmth provided, and African American soldiers were known for wearing the buffalo robes on the western frontier. All right, Jake liked that robe, man, that buffalo robe. All right. And for scholars who curate exhibitions on African American military experience, cuts like this one bring to the mind images of the 9th, 10th Cavalries, and the 24th and 25th Infantries, known as Buffalo Soldiers. So that's a small group. A 9th, 10th Cavalry, 24th, 25th Infantries. Those are small groups. He showed a number of 180,000, I believe, in the TikTok video. Okay, but that was all soldiers. So these other men, that can't be more than a few thousand, okay? I'm not well versed on how many men comprise of an infantry or cavalry, but I wouldn't say 100,000. Okay, these are all black regiments, which were mainly led by white, so-called white U.S. Army officers. So Esau was running them, and 3 black officer exceptions were West Point graduates, Henry O. Flipper, John Hanks, Alexander, and Charles Young. Okay, so those guys had to go all the way to the most elite Naval Academy. Okay. Well, Slovakia. That's Ann Arbor. That's not Ann Arbor. That's in Annapolis, I believe. West Point. That's U.S. Army. So the highest level U.S. Army Academy. I had to get pretty much probably the only Jakes in that academy in the first place. And what did? They sent them on one of the most dangerous and gruesome expeditions, or how would you say, military objective, or what were they, operation, right? To go out to the west and help Esau take down the tribes, the Gadite, the last of them Gadite tribes. But you know, Esau tried. These Indians act like Gad was just out there peaceful. You had some wild ass Indians, man. They run in the villages. Why? Why would they do that? Because our people are savages. Okay, Esau said that about Gad. To an extent, he was right at some points, because Gad would go into whole villages, raise it, burn it, rape all the women, kidnap the little girls, keep them, raise them in their villages. And Esau, he shows that in his films and all that, but it's true. That actually happened, man. Oh, you're romanticizing. You're believing in stereotypes. Nigga, that happened. You dumbass. Okay? Why do you think Gad was doing it? Because Esau was doing it to us. What do you think the whole story about Pocahontas is about? Esau was taking the young Gadite woman, running through her, taking her all over Europe. Woman dies before she gets out her teen years because of all the abuse the so-called white man put on him. So, yeah, shit was going down. But really, we all know what really was the real reason was it. The so-called white man is the devil the Bible speaks of, and the so-called white man is the sword of the Heavenly Father. Okay, the Most High used the wicked as his sword to go and do his judgments on who? you so-called Latinos, so-called Native Americans, you so-called black people, Negroes. Okay? So they said these black soldiers helped protect the westward expansion by building roads and participating in significant military actions such as the Red River War and the Battle of San Juan Hill during the Spanish-American War, 1898. So Jake was whooping ass. Okay, this is the point where Esau's like, "Hey, man, we need to get these guys out there, man, because we can't go past these certain warrior tribes because they're fucking us up." All right, the brave men also served among the first National Park Rangers. Black soldiers used military service as a strategy to obtain equal rights as citizens. Paradoxically, they sought to achieve this engaging in government-led wars meant to overtake the Southwest and Great Plains from Native Americans. So, they wanted to assimilate to the so-called white man. Well, what were those five civilized tribes doing? They were trying to do the same exact thing Jake was doing. Assimilate, help Esau out. Okay, here that you're doing all these great things with the so-called white man, you're assimilating. And what did he do? He sent your ass on a trailer tours any damn ways. What did he do? He still hit your ass with Jim Crow. Paradoxically, they sought to achieve this by engaging in government-led wars meant to overtake the Southwest Great Ocelot. Yeah, picture of Jake, man. And this is good history that, he wants to go into because, hey, man, this is the history of our people. Okay, they act like the Buffalo Soldiers weren't going in like how Esau was going in on the tribes, man. They was doing, Gad, would surrender. He wouldn't want to kill him, and vice versa. There's a really good film. I think it is actually called Buffalo Soldiers with Danny Glover. You got to watch that film, man. And, you can say it's Hollywood or not. I believe it to be a good depiction of what was really going on historically, okay? That Judah and Gad had a certain respect for each other, okay? Knowing that this world isn't theirs anymore. This world is the so-called white man's, and whatever they're doing, they're just trying to survive. But at the same time, be respectful, be a man about stuff. Back then, being a man meant a lot. Nowadays, you don't even know what the hell a man is. Let me keep reading so I go on some scriptures. All right. According to popular lore, Native Americans coined the Buffalo Soldiers either because the soldiers' dark curly hair resembled buffalo mane or because the soldiers fought like the fierce Great Plains buffalo, which is both. Okay? It makes total sense why they would say that. Its origin notwithstanding, African Americans embraced the moniker. World War I and the 92nd Infantry Division adopted the buffalo as a symbol for its unit patch. The regiments have been immortalized in popular culture through songs like Reggae Giant, Bob Marley's Buffalo Soldier. Yep, the television production like 1997's Buffalo Soldier, starring Danny Glover, and in films like Spike Lee's Miracle on St. Anna, which chronicles the Buffalo Soldiers who served in the invasion of Italy in World War II. So, what does this really show, man? That Judah, was channeling that spirit. The same spirit, man. Warriors, using that, tapping into that buffalo spirit and helping Esau conquer the world. Here it is. There was over there in Italy too. So here it is. You want to make it seem like it's something bad, No, if you have the eyes to see it, you're going to be able to see it. Let me get that. These are all signs for you to look at things and understand, that's what that means. That's why that happened. Matthew 13:13. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing. Their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear and have not heard them. That's right. We have it all here in front of us to see. Okay? Blessed are you, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. So, because you can even understand and listen and hear out the prophets, and you can actually see what you're talking about, that's a blessing. Because these other guys, that TikTok video, actually, those guys are totally clueless of what all this really truly means. Everything in our history really just means that we're the Israelites. We're brothers. We're kindred spirits. And go deep into those films and into these songs. Okay, and into the actual history, you see that. Oh, these men are actual relatives, man. And they have a common enemy and a common experience dealing with who? Esau, Edom, so-called white man the devil Bible speaks of. All right? And see, that's dope, man. That's hard-ass that's dope right there. Yeah, I can see one of the brothers in the camps. See? That's the spirit. Sheepskin Crew, Flatbush, Brooklyn. Now, buffaloes with sheepskin coats help keep this Brooklyn girls warm. So that's the spirit, man. And what, there's that. Max June with his beautiful coat as a character of Goldie in 1973 blaxploitation film, The Mac. The Mac. He was that pimp coat everybody calls. But where does that really go back to? That buffalo coat. You see? And the Heavenly Father got it. You can see it in the spirit, man. Because who was rocking that coat first? Gad was rocking that coat, man. Judas saw, oh man, we gotta rock that. I gotta rock that one. And plus, man, they was in some rough areas. Okay, so that's pretty much it. It goes deeper into some of the stuff that was going. Yeah, we honor those wars, but of what wars? Yeah, let's go into that, what Gad says. Because, yeah, you don't want to... This guy acts like he's, my elder chiefs. Well, let's see what the chiefs were saying of Judah back then. 18 African-American Buffalo soldiers earned medals of honor while engaged against American Indian combatants between 1870 and 1890. We honor those warriors, but what of the wars? A photograph in the collection of the National Museum of American Indian offers a snapshot of the difficult story of the Ute Indians' removal from Colorado, in which Buffalo soldiers played a small yet ironically heroic part. Pictured in this photo are Chief Ure of the Uncompahgre band of Ute and the Colorado Railroad developer Otto Mears. So there you go. You already know what that means. Okay. Otto Mears, you know what he wanted to do? It's a photo 1879. He wanted to move Gad off the land so he could build his railroad. That iron snake. All right. Chief Ure was the controversial negotiator for the Ute Treaty of 1868. The treaty ceded Ute ownership of the eastern third of the present-day Colorado to the United States, but reserved for the Ute the western part of Colorado Territory. The 1868 treaty also created 2 Indian agencies deep within the Ute reservation to manage treaty payments and other obligations. In 1879, the Indian agent at the White River Agency, Nathan Meeker, called for the U.S. Army to enforce his authority. The Ute interpreted the Army's approach as a declaration of war. Ute fighters intercepted the advancing soldiers and pinned them down with sniper fire. Buffalo soldiers in Company D of the 9th Cavalry rushed to provide relief. 29-year-old African Private Henry Johnson earned a Medal of Honor when he risked his life to bring water to the wounded. More reinforcements arrived and the Ute withdrew. Later, the government called upon Chief Ure and Otto Mears, as shown below, to help negotiate the peace. Ure addressed Congress to justify the Utes' actions, but it was no use. Mears was appointed to a commission that drafted the Ute Removal Act of 1880. Signed by both men, resulting in the forced surrender of nearly all Ute lands in Colorado. And so that was that. They had if it wasn't for Judah to go in there to save Esau's ass, it would have swung a different way, man. The Ute today are divided among three federally recognized nations with reservations in Utah, southern Colorado, and northern New Mexico. All three Ute nations continue to pursue sovereign rights. So yeah, a lot of those Ute nations I know they're in Utah, the ones that I know of, in southern Colorado. All right, a lot of these Indian tribes in the Southwest are all scattered and just vacant in plots of land. Like you got the Hopi, they got moved out to northern Arizona. I believe they're originally from New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. I gotta look it up, but the Hopi Nation, they're right in the smack dab in the middle of the Navajo Nation. Why? Because Esau said, "Oh, just put them there," and what did that lead to? Friction and hate between those tribes, amongst Gad, hate each other. All right, Navajo don't like Hopi, Hopi don't like Navajos. That's how it goes, man. Hey, what do they call it? What's the one? Who do the Lakota hate on? Who they go against hardcore, man? It's either the Crow or I forgot, man. But these tribes, they be historical beefs, so to speak, because they're jakes. This is what they do. African American men have fought in every American war. Yet the Buffalo Soldiers, 2 cavalry and 4 infantry regiments have a unique place in the history and memory. All right, so they're hyping them up. Why? Because they're the ones that made America great. All right? Cabinet Carter, Samuel Bridgewater. So they go into these people. Why? Because these families have a big descent. Have a lot of descendants, man. Look at Jake. They put the buffalo on the World War I jacket. That's hard. I can see brother rocking that. You know what I mean? But come on, that's the spirit of Jake. Jake was going into these wars with a spirit, man. That's the spirit of Yabashim Al-Shai on these men. Okay. Go to some scriptures real quick. Yeah, because this guy over here, come on, he's trying to spread equality. You're out your damn mind. Since when? Since when is that? You're no different. You're just he would have been an Indian scout, telling us surrender to the so-called white man. Got the nerve. Got some damn nerve, man. Yeah, because these guys, they're never gonna see it, man. They're never gonna truly understand what the Heavenly Father's doing right now, man. Okay? He said, "Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause division and offenses contrary to the doctrines you have learned, and avoid them." Yeah, so we learned as Israelites, and even just as a regular person, you learn that you have a common history. You have something that bonds you together. Okay? And that's what? Oppression. This hell that you're in. Okay? Living in this so-called white man's world as a second-class citizen. All right, but some people are still trying to cause divisions. All right, that's a sign. Okay, not only is that really mean, out there, these other people, but also people within the doctrine causing division and offenses, trying to twist it up. But now that you know this truth, you see these other guys, what they're doing in the world, trying to stir up hatred between the tribes. Don't fall into that. Well, that's why you got guys that are Israelites, but they're Negro only. Okay, that's an offense. That's contrary to the doctrine. And some of these guys, they fall out the truth. Okay? They may be from the tribe of Judah. They may be from the north or the south. They fall the truth, and they start thinking that they got nothing to do with the other group of people. Oh, black, them Indians. Those are fucking heathen. Those are gooks. Those American Indians and those aren't. I'm black. Now you're back to being black. Back to black. Falling out. You over here calling them Arabs. He's an Arab, but before that, you thought they were brothers. You thought they were the tribe of Gad. You thought they were the tribe of Issachar. Hey, shit happens, man. Verse 17. Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause division and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. Yeah, just avoid that, because all you have to do is lock into the spirit. You're going to see it all. It's right there in front of your face. There's a reason why all this shit is happening right now. Okay? The Supreme Court is making these decisions. Okay? This Pride Month is probably the most, I would say, extreme. Okay, it's an extreme month. It's radical, right? Which is the most extreme form, okay, of this agenda that we're living under, man. And why is that? Okay, they're doing that because they're trying to lock down your people's minds. And what is that really doing? It's creating division. So here it is, you regular people are fighting over abortion. You're fighting over criminal justice reform. You're fighting over other issues. Issues that we're fighting over LGBTQ rights, abortion, and all these things that don't really affect you per se, the greater population of people. But you have nothing to, you could care less about what's happening with inflation, the price of gas, the astronomical prices of housing, how unaffordable housing is. How can the American people let that happen? The dream is done. Being able to afford a single family home is impossible. Okay, for a regular American citizen on a median income. So that's that middle class. Done, wiped away, gone in a generation. Why? Because people rather be divided. But the Heavenly Father wants that. He's setting it up. He don't want this guy. Look at this bug out. Most I don't want this dude, okay? He's only dealing with his elect. And the other guy in the beginning, okay? Revelation 2:7. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I eat of the tree of life, will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of the Heavenly Father. And unto the angel of the church in which Smyrna write, these three things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So, there you go. There's a group out there running around calling themselves Jews, okay? Including ourselves. Some of those men are part of that same synagogue of Satan, but we know who that other one is, the main one, the mafia one, all right? All right, but he knows thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. Who's that talking about? Who's in that state right now? Who's suffering? Who's in poverty but is rich? Those are the Israelites. You so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, that was great tribulation. The Trail of Tears, slavery, the Civil War, World War I, World War II. Jake was in there. So this guy, man. This guy acts like Gad wasn't in World War I and World War II fighting for Esau. You bug out. You goddamn bug out. All right. For none of those things which thou shalt suffer, behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. Yeah, it's going to go down out here, but Akim. But we're going to be faithful unto death, Lord willing. All right, and we're preparing ourselves to do that. You got to have a strong belief. And that guy fighting for equality, he ain't, come on. He's not going to get the crown of life. He's not going to make it. All right. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith to the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. All right. So you need to have that spiritual ear to even hear what the Spirit of Yahweh Shemel Shai is saying to his men. Okay. You don't want to die that second death. Okay. You don't want to go down that path. But if you will if you can follow this guy. All right. Let me go to, I had 2 more articles. I'm going to try to go through them real quick just because they were good. See, what the fuck, man? I gotta give Esau preferences. demons, man. Okay. This is Al Jazeera, okay? Look, Elaine, assistant professor of history at University of Pittsburgh. Yeah, an actual scholar, not some bug out on TikTok. You know, he's over here. That's the thing. A lot of these bug outs, and that's why I'm doing these videos on them, because they acting like they're coming from a space of authority. You know, you're just like dude walking in the forest with your hair down, looking like a complete bug out, man. All right. How Native Americans adopted slavery from white settlers. Yeah, and nobody wants to see that Indian speak. I want to see a real Indian. An Indian with a strawberry nose and pockmarked face in complete destitute reservation status, man, in a broken down Chevy, rusted old Chevy, talking his shit. All right. Hey, those are the Indians I come from. Those are the Indians I know. All right. Hey, how Native Americans adopted slavery from white settlers. But this guy, come on, man. That guy gets slapped up real quick. All right. But on to this. How Native Americans adopted slavery from white settlers. And how people in Indian territory were denied their rights even after their emancipation. The 5 nations of Indian territory: Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, Seminole. But see, they're showing this picture, but that's not even them. That looks like a modern day picture of these Indians. All right, of Indians, but probably from the American Indian movement, a film. Look at that dude got a tattoo. Come on, man. What's that even a tattoo of? Jimi Hendrix? Come on, man. Anyways. The part that I wanted to read here was about captivity, slavery among Native American tribes. She goes into the... Oh, this is a part right here. This is for you, vocab. The Native American slave trade thrived for over a century. Captivity and slavery among Native Americans. The indigenous peoples of North America had utilized the form of captive taking and involuntary labor long before European contact, all right? Captive taking was most often used to replace a dead loved one within the family or with a new person. Hey, so it was through the spirit. And captive taking is something that's in the scriptures. That's in the scriptures. Captive taking, all right? That's an Israelite thing. So the indigenous people of North America had utilized a form of captive taking and involuntary labor long before European contact, but this form of bondage was neither transgenerational nor permanent. Captive taking was most often used to replace a dead loved one within the family with a new person. The captive would then take on this deceased person's sexual or labor-related capacity. Yeah, and what main captive taking Jake would do? You take that one of them girls. One of them women's. All right? Jake was doing that in the ancient world. There's specific laws regarding that. Through various avenues such as sexual relationships, adoption, hard work, military service, or escape, captives could enhance their status or even assume new identities. After European contact in the 1500s, white Europeans persuaded Native Americans to enslave members of the Native American tribes using the European method of slave trading, which focused on the accumulation of captives for sale and thus profit, rather than population augmentation. All right, the Native American slave trade. Tribes enslaving each other, man. Selling each other to the so-called white man. Does that sound familiar? All right. The Native American slave trade thrived for over a century, but began to be largely phased out in the early to mid-18th century. An important factor in its decline was the Yamasee War. Okay, colonists and Gadite going to war. Gadite killing about 400 colonists. All right. So while the Yamasees lost, they succeeded in forcing European colonists to reconsider the risk inherent of the system of Native American enslavement. If Native Americans became angry at the terms of enslavement or allied Native Americans were accidentally enslaved, they might once again retaliate militarily. Yeah, because, you don't really want to go to war like that over and over again. And back then, Esau didn't have a cavalry. There's a reason why I was reading about the Buffalo Soldiers. Esau didn't have that cavalry. He didn't set it up until the Civil War, when the federal government became too big to fail. And that war was really about having a big central government, man, that tells you what to do, and that has a main military, a big bad military with the endless supply of funds okay, to get those resources to go to war. All right, and then that's what that was really all about. Okay. In addition, enslaved Native Americans often successfully escaped from their owners, as they were familiar with the geography and could elude slave catchers and return to their homelands. Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to see, oh, that's my slave right there. No, that's a straight up. The Indians will kill your ass. All right. Slovakia. Therefore, the MC War, the African transatlantic slave trade to the North American colonies, drastically increased to account for the loss of Native American slaves. Yeah, so that was part of the system back then. Vocab. There was a Native American slave trade, and you best believe they were sending them across the Atlantic. Vocab Malone. You goddamn demon. All right. Some members of the 5 tribes became owners of enslaved black women and men themselves as they increasingly adapted to Euro-American norms, such as style, dress, and governmental structure. Beginning in the late 1700s and intensifying in the early 1800s, members of the 5 tribes used enslaved black women and men as domestic and agricultural laborers. For example, Chickasaw planters exported an estimated 1,000 bales of cotton in 1830. This cotton was picked and processed by black slaves. Comparatively, in 1826, the state of Georgia produced 150,000 bales of cotton. So they barely had, they weren't producing as much as the other cotton plantations. Why? Mainly because it was small time. In 1860, about 30 years after their removal from Indian territory from their respective homes in the Southeast, Cherokee Nation citizens owned 2,511 slaves, 50% of the total population. Choctaw citizens owned 2,349 slaves, 40% of their population, and Creek citizens owned 1,532 slaves, 10% of their total population. Chickasaw citizens owned 975 slaves, which amounted to 18% of their population, a proportion equivalent to that of white slave owners in Tennessee, a former neighbor of the Chickasaw Nation and a large slaveholding state. So, you own roughly close to 10, 15, 20% of your whole population is what? A slave population. And that sounds like Esau kept that pretty much going. Because if he likes to break down the total population of Jake at that same rough 12, 15%. Okay? So you see what they're trying to do here. But at the end of the day, okay, that's not even 10,000 slaves, 10,000 people, okay? This made the Chickasaws the largest slaveholding nation of the 5 civilized tribes. Proportions of the population. National laws restricted the movement of enslaved people, preventing them from learning to read and write, and prohibited interracial relationships. However, in the U.S., the majority of people in these nations did not own slaves. Large-scale crop production and a system of slavery that made it possible and lucrative were mainly adopted by wealthier native families. And so those native families were who? Families that had that assimilated, and really they had so-called white men come in and marry the woman, whose prosperity allowed them to influence the political, social, and economic affairs of the nation. Thus, an influential proportion of tribal citizens stood to lose a vital part of the economic resources of emancipation took place. The 5 tribes involved themselves in the Civil War military, preserved their practice of slavery, and the fight for political autonomy. Members of all nations served on both the Union and Confederate sides of the war, and a number of battles took place within Indian Territory. Hey, and another reason why they fought with the Confederacy is because they made those deals already with the South. And then they all knew that once they allowed the federal government to take over, they had to make a new deal. And the new deal, they already knew what was going to be. Okay? It's going to be that Trail of Tears. Get out of here. All right. After the war, the treaty signed between the U.S. and all 5 of these slaveholding Native American nations, called the Treaties of 1866, ended wartime hostilities and freed the enfranchised people of African descent. These treaties were part of a larger American mission to take over Native American land, and also included land secessions and American settlement and railway construction in Indian Territory. All right. While the former slaves Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, and Choctaw nations became tribal citizens due to their treaties 1866, throughout the 20th century, all 5 tribes eventually rescinded their tribal membership of these freed people and their descendants. Although their former slaves had lived among them for generations, sharing land, history, trauma with them, the 5 tribes claimed they were interlopers who had no place among them because they had no native ancestry. All right, and they started doing that. Why? Because they wanted the more goodies for themselves, man. They didn't want to share it with all these other guys. People get greedy. Oh, it's because they hated black people? No, man, there's a scarce amount of resources. And you want the most you can. So you just say, oh, well, those are just, they're freedmen just like the rest. But if you look at all those Black Wall Street, right, which was where? In Tulsa, Oklahoma, Indian Territory. Oklahoma was all Indian Territory. There was 10, 15, around that much different all-black cities in Indian Territory. So they went on to become successful. But what ended up happening? Did the Indians go there and burn them down? Did Gad do that? Did Gad go in there and firebomb them and kill them and rape them and lynch them? Was Gad doing that? Or was that the so-called white man? Fucking assholes out there, man. Always got something to say, but when it comes to the so-called white man and his wickedness, nowhere to be found. You want to be equal. Now you want to talk about equality. All right, the descendants of these former slaves fought back, filing several lawsuits. On August 31st, 2017, the descendants of people enslaved by members of the Cherokee Nation were victorious. U.S. District Court from Washington ruled that these descendants should have citizenship rights of the Cherokee Nation. Now, the descendants of people enslaved by the Cherokee Nation have filed similar suit, hoping to find consummate validation. Yeah, that was all corruption. All right, and now they're trying to get it back, get their identities back. Why? Because they are part of that nation. So our people go through hell and high water to get those little goodies, but when it comes to being a Hebrew Israelite and get them real goodies, that blessing, hey, they want to fight amongst each other over these other things, man. They're about the Most High is about to get rid of. Okay. So, that's another good article. Let me just breeze through this real quick and wrap it up. All right, the 5 civilized tribes. Okay. Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, in Oklahoma. Yeah, why they went to Oklahoma? Because they got pushed out by Andrew Jackson in the Trail of Tears right here. So here it is. They got civilized. They're over here. Oh, we'll do with the white man. We'll hang out with you. And they start sending them out. Yeah, they crossed how many different states? Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky, Illinois. Oh, shit. That devil showed up. Oh, shit, see? Satan, see? All the way to Oklahoma, Missouri. After being forcibly removed from their homes in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and North Carolina, most Cherokee moved into the 11 removal camps, 10 in Tennessee and 1 in Alabama. There they await the start of an 800-mile journey. Yeah. All because of this fucking devil, man. Not all because of him, but he was the main force. And we already know how he really felt about Gad. The word civilized was applied to the five tribes because, broadly speaking, they had developed extensive economic ties with the whites and had assimilated into American settler culture. Some members of these southeastern tribes had adopted European clothing, spoke English, practiced Christianity, and even owned slaves. In 1821, the Cherokee developed a written language, and by 1828, the Cherokee Phoenix, the first Native American newspaper, began publication. The Cherokee also established a strong central government with a constitution based on the United States Constitution. So there you go. They were its own nation. So of course, as soon as the Civil War ended, okay, they were on the losing side. What do you think happened? Got to step and fetch it, move it now. But here they had their own newspaper. They assimilated the American settler culture. They were this is what you thought the so-called white man wanted you to do. They did everything the so-called white man wanted them to do, and they still got pushed off. Okay? Let me get that, man. Salakia. Habakkuk 2 and 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. That's right. So the so-called white man, he ain't upright, man. He ain't nothing right about him. That's why I just read about how these tribes did everything the so-called white man wanted them to do, or said if they did, we could be friends. Hey, you do this, we could be friends. I'm not gonna be violent towards you. Don't even worry, man. We good now. Nah, that didn't happen. Behold, the soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Who enlargeth his desire is hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against them, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. That's right. Okay, so he covets that land. Okay. Oh, so let me just keep reading because it's going. It says, Woe to him that increases that which is not his, how long? And to him that layeth himself with thick clay. There shall not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be booties unto them, because thou hast spoiled many nations. All the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and have sinned against thy soul. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establish a city by iniquity. And that's America, man. Okay? Violence of the land, the men's blood. Okay? Violence of the city. Okay? A town built with by blood. Cities established through iniquity. That's America. All right? And we just read that here in the Britannica about the so-called 5 civilized tribes, who we know as Reubenites. Okay, so Lord willing, that was edifying. Until next time, I'm going to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushai, B'Shem Rakakadash. Once again, double honors to our apostles and elders, great millstone. Peace and salutations to all you brothers out there teaching this word in truth and sincerity. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the 1/3 of the nation of Israel, scattered through the 4 corners of the earth. And whether you like it or not, you so-called Native Americans are Israelites. All right, you so-called Negroes, descendants of slaves here in Americas, of West Africa. You're Israelites, man. You're brothers. Shalom. And you so-called white people, can't forget about you. You're the devil the Bible speaks of. Shalom.